Welcome to our series on lessons from Exodus. Today is episode 7, which is entitled Excuses Don't Work with God. We shall be looking at the calling of Moses from Exodus chapters 3 and 4. In the last episode, we saw that God used a burning bush to get Moses' attention. Once Moses paid attention to the sign of God, God spoke to him and he started to revive the dream of a deliverer that Moses had since he was a little child. But before speaking anything more, God asked Moses to take his shoes off, for he was standing on holy ground. Then God began to unfold his plans for the deliverance of the children of Israel from slavery in Egypt to bring them into the promised land. Moses was going to be a key player in God's plans. This revelation from God brought up all of Moses' old insecurities and unresolved hurts from the time Moses tried to save his people 40 years ago up until now. He reacted to the call of God not with excitement or wonder. He came up with a line of excuses trying to convince God that he had the wrong person for this job. Moses has a series of excuses why he should not be the one to go to face Pharaoh and to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. Let's look at each excuse one at a time. Excuse number 1. Who am I to face Pharaoh? His identity as a prince has long gone. Whatever accomplishment he had as a prince was also gone. Whatever confidence in the flesh he could have had was also gone by now. In short, Moses was saying, I'm nobody. And how did God refute that excuse? God said, I'll be with you for sure. Don't be afraid. You will bring them to this mountain to worship me. It is interesting to note that the sign that God was giving to Moses to prove his call was to bring the children of Israel to worship God in this mountain after he has brought them out. It was a sign for something in the future. And how could a sign in the future help Moses' confidence for the present? That question may be answered in another episode. Excuse number 2. Who am I to face the children of Israel? They did not believe me in the past. Why would they believe me now? How will they believe that I have met with God? What's your name? And God's reply, I am has sent you. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has a name. And God said, gather the children of Israel and assure them that God has seen their afflictions and is about to act in fulfillment of the covenant he has made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their forefathers. Go with them to Pharaoh, but I assure you he won't listen to you. I will multiply signs and wonders, then he will let you go. When you leave Egypt, you will get their wealth on your way out. So God was giving Moses an overall big picture of the plan of what was going to happen. I am is quite an unusual name, isn't it? Now let's go to Exodus chapter 4. Excuse number 3. No one will believe me. No one is going to take me seriously. God's reply, I will give you 2 miracles that you can do anytime. These should convince them. From now on, the staff in your hand will be my staff. If these 2 signs don't convince them, turn water into blood. That should do. So go, Moses. But no, Moses wasn't ready yet, so he came up with a 4th excuse. I'm not a good speaker. I stutter. It is important to note that when Moses was still a prince, he was mighty in word and in deed. Something had happened to him in the course of 40 years. The experiences of rejection that he had experienced prior to fleeing from Egypt had left such a deep wound in his soul that he had become a stutterer. God's reply for that? No problem. I make man's mouth. I can use your mouth. Excuse number 5. Moses was not done yet. This one shouldn't be called an excuse. It was a defiance rather than an excuse. He had run out of excuses. He just didn't want to go. God's reply to that, now God was angry. Why was Moses not concerned about his people anymore? Had he lost his heart for the mission? Had he lost his vision to serve God? God's reply, in a sense, was that Moses could not get away with this. But God was willing to involve Aaron and let him be the speaker if Moses was afraid to speak up. Moses saw no point in resisting. He then went to his father-in-law, and surprisingly, his father-in-law gave him the blessing to go. God showed Moses that Pharaoh would be a tough person to deal with. He would probably lose his firstborn son before he would let Israel go. It sounds almost like God was looking for an excuse to engage in a power encounter with Pharaoh. So now Moses, Zipporah his wife, and their 2 sons set out on a journey to go back to Egypt. Moses had neglected to circumcise his younger son, and God almost killed him for that, as circumcision was a sign of covenant between God and Israel. Zipporah reluctantly circumcised her younger son and saved Moses' life. Before they took this journey, God had said to Aaron to go and meet Moses on the mountain of God, and they had met, and Moses had shared with Aaron, his brother, everything that God had spoken to him. So now they're on their journey back to Egypt. And when Moses arrived with Aaron in Egypt and announced to the elders of Israel what God intended to do, they responded in worship. This was proof to Moses that God had him in the right place. Children of Israel had been living under oppression for so long. They were sighing and crying out to God for help. God had now responded to their cries by sending Moses and Aaron to help them. You see, Moses did not see at first that his call had nothing to do with his talent, gifting, or accomplishments. It was all about getting Israel out of their problems, out of the oppression and slavery. It was all about God keeping the promise he had made with their forefathers. It does not matter what talents, abilities, or training we have. God can use them or give us some new ones. He wants our availability, not our ability. Are you willing to stand in the gap and let God use you in any way He wants? There is a needy world out there. He wants to work through you to bring solutions to the world's pressing problems. He wants to use you to showcase Him. Are you willing? Think about these things. Please do not ignore the call of God on your life. It is very easy for you to look inward and say, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'm not able to do this, I'm not able to do that, I don't have the right degree, I don't have the right training, I don't have the right education. And all those are excuses, and excuses don't work with God. God knows exactly what you have or what you don't have. All He wants is your availability. Are you willing? God bless.